Hello everybody and welcome back to KXP. So today we are going to get started on our Jool program. However, as the title suggests, we are going to be working on a rendezvous today. I will get into the hows and whys of that later when we're building the crafts for it. But for now, let's go ahead and start off in the admin building. I was hoping to start a program in order to head out to Jool. However, as we see here, not only do we need the 500 reputation and the facility be upgraded to level 3, both of which are fairly easy, but we must have also returned a crew from the surface of Moho, Eve, Duna, Dress, or Elu. And that doesn't exactly fit with our goal right now of hitting Jool first. I know Jool is one of the harder, if not the hardest, areas to get to. However, that's where we determine we want to go. And so we are going to do so without a strategy program. But that's not to say we won't have a strategy. But anyways, we're here looking at the science that we can afford, and most of what we want we can't. I could really use with those deep space engines and even the heavy powered lifting engines. So we're going to come over here to our science station over at the Mun, where we can essentially print the science that we need just by time warping until they're done, and then transferring it back to Kerbin. We get 500 points every time we do that. So basically kind of going forward, if we need science, if we need a part, we can just head over there and get the science necessary. But I decide once I come back to immediately change my mind from the deep space engines, and I start pursuing some ion engines, because what's more deep space than that? If you're not familiar, ion engines have a very high efficiency deep in space at the cost of a very low thrust to weight ratio, but nonetheless they'll be very useful. Come back to the space station and grab more science. Now I'll be able to get those deep space engines, but yet again I decide to change my mind, and instead of going into the rocketry, check out some of my other options. I've been through these options probably half a dozen times in this episode alone, but not to mention all the other times that I've looked through all my options. But it's hard to choose what you want to spend your science on here, especially since it's so much per item. But I look at the nuclear engines, but essentially we already have that taken care of with the ions, so we don't need that. However, we are going to need some pretty hefty solar panels moving forward, possibly on this mission, but mostly moving forward. So we're going to go ahead and grab those solar panels as well. However, I think an RTG would have done me better. We're going to do that on a later time, but we're going to get those and ultimately not even use them. We end up using our extra large gigantic solar panels instead, so we could have actually gotten those engines. But nonetheless, we are here in the build. We are just going to make a probe, something to fly by either Jool or one of the moons of Jool, depending on what we can achieve. And we're going to use our newly acquired ion engines and xenon gas for this. Using an engine plate, we're going to stack these up to 7 in a 6+1 configuration. And with enough with enough xenon gas and enough electric charge, that gives us 10,241 delta V out in the vacuum of space. The thrust to weight ratio of only 0.12, so it's going to take a lot to push this thing. It's going to have a lot of long burns, but that is what you have to deal with when it comes to ion engines. So now Jool is pretty far away, and we don't have communications network set up, so we are going to need the biggest, strongest communications dish we have. And in fact, we're going to actually need one larger than this. Unfortunately, we just don't have that technology at the moment, but we'll get into that a little bit later. We're stacking some science in here, of course. If we're going to go all that way, we want to learn a little something, not just say that we did it. It's around this time that I'm thinking I may, if I can return this back to Kerbin, I may want to put a heat shield and the coupler on this, but we will look at that at another time. I'm going to finish off our science. I want to keep Most of our experiments relatively simple, and most of them easy to transmit, because there is still the chance that we're not going to be able to recover this craft, as it might go launching out into interplanetary or interstellar space. Excuse me. Putting on the lower stage that will help us get us out of the Kerbin system and potentially on our way to Jool. However, given the fact that we have 10,000 Delta V in the upper stage alone, we're not going to need very much of this. But it would be helpful to have some liquid fuel and oxidizer to make our escape burn a little bit easier. We're using the Where Can I Go mod, which is a handy little Delta V estimator that'll let you know if, based on if this craft is in orbit, where it can go. Now's the time to put on some short-range communication for this, because we are going to need to have control of it in the Kerbin sphere of influence, because this is indeed a probe and not crewed. So we're going to put some heavy-duty communication dishes on there, so that way we can maintain control as we leave. Throwing on some reaction wheels here, because the engine's gimbling is, decent, but not enough to really give it a lot of control. So we're just going to go ahead and put that on there. We're going to test it out and see how it does, and I am going to include this footage because of the fact that I was hoping to get our way out to Jool today, and that would be the mission. This would be what we were running today, and as you see here, the craft is more than capable. We can't get an orbit around Lathe or Jool, not easily enough anyway, so I decided to forego it, but it was a good proof of concept that it will work. However, during that time, I kept getting warnings and notifications that our Kerbals on their space station were running out of fuel, and they kept complaining. They're like, oh, we're running out of hydrogen, we're running out of oxygen, and it's just like, come on, just make your own water. But apparently that wasn't enough, and the 2.5 years, or like, it was kind of like a year and a third, or a year and 2/3 time that it took to get into a proper Jool escape trajectory, or basically the time that it would take to rendezvous. It took a while just to time warp there, and then after that it was, a long enough journey that they ran out of life support. So the mission now for today is we need to go send up some supplies, so that way the people on the space station can survive while we do our Jool mission, because we are going to time warp. We're going to focus the entirety of the episode on the mission. If I was playing a little more realistically, we would basically send out our craft and then go work on other stuff and wait until it got closer to its maneuver or its goal or whatever, and then we would refocus on it. But this is more about the exploration than the realism. I can deal with realism in other series in RP1 or the next season of KXP, whatever. But so we are going to focus on the entirety of the mission, meaning that we are going to be time warping our way there, which is years and years here on Kerbin and up at the space station. So with the limited supply, they have about 2.5 years worth of supply on the space station to feed a crew of 4, and so that's just not nearly enough. So we are going to go ahead and send this up, which will have roughly 17 years worth of supplies, which will be more than enough to handle the mission at hand. So with this craft, it's the Refueler Craft 1. We are going to go ahead and simulate it, and then build its lower stage and go ahead and get it out on the launch pad. So to recap, we are going to send up this craft, the Refuel Craft 1, although it could have been better named because it's not actually fuel but supplies, Resupply Craft 1. But we are going to send this up probe controlled out to the Mun orbit, change our inclination, rendezvous, and resupply. So this is not exactly a how-to because I didn't actually film the way that I would have wanted to for a how-to such as that. However, I will be going over exactly what I'm doing and best practices in order to rendezvous. So hence the title. I want to kind of teach y'all in this because it was a pretty easy mission. It went according to plan and everything. So I feel like this would be a good way to show you how I do it anyways. There may be more efficient ways, but yeah, this mission could have been a little more efficient, at least with our approach. But we have the unfortunate orbit that we do for our space station out there. It's in a polar orbit, but not an easy approach. So we're just going to kind of rush through the orbiting process of curbing the lifting because we've done this many times before. But we had a fun little flip during the ascent here. Relatively calm and mostly controlled flip too, all on the singular axis. And right before we cross the barrier to space, we're almost lined up. Past our goal a little bit, but our RCS is plenty. We've got a lot of monopropellant aboard, so we can afford to cancel out our rotation a little bit and then bring ourselves back up to our trajectory. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get ourselves into orbit, and then I'll focus on the hows and the whys here as we transfer. I was pretty happy with how this craft came out. It didn't take much to build. It was all relatively intuitive as far as what I needed to put on there. I basically just needed to remember all the bits and pieces that I needed: the solar panels, the batteries, the communication dishes, especially the RCS. That's my first tip right now. Tip number one, when you're doing a rendezvous mission, never forget the RCS and don't skimp out on the monopropellant. You can always transfer it to whatever craft you're rendezvousing with later. You can transfer the remnants of it. But yeah, RCS is majorly helpful. You can rendezvous by using your prograde and retrograde, pointing towards your target and pointing away from your target and slowing down to kill out your velocity. You can use the Matt Lown method of pointing your targets towards each other and just letting them drift. But if you're going to just be using the standard RCS approach to docking, it's very important. But anyways, we are now pushing our way towards the Mun. Nothing fancy here. We just need to get a Mun rendezvous, which is an interesting way to kind of bring up my next point, is the fact of if you can rendezvous with a planet, if you can rendezvous with a moon, it's generally the same as rendezvousing with a craft. You have to find the right ejection angle to meet up with it. You have your markers for your closest approach, and you adjust the where and when of your ejection to match and meet your craft where it is in space at the time you get there. And that's essentially the same concept. So but we'll work on that soon. See a nice little pass by of Kerbin as we leave. I really like this Marlin engine. That's the engine bell that we have. I like the little foil wrap that it has. It's a nice touch there. And this one has some pretty colors from the plumes. I'm not entirely sure which mod this is from, but enjoy it. Anyways, we're going to skip ahead. There wasn't much that you missed in the transfer stage. We did do a course correction to better meet up with the orbit of our space station. However, you'll see here in a moment when we get into the map view that there's only so much we can do. Let's go ahead and bring ourselves into orbit with a decent thrust to weight ratio. It takes very little effort to bring ourselves down. Yeah, so you see that orbit that the space station has? It's basically, I mean, there is no horizontal in space, but it's basically horizontal to the plane that it's on. It's very low eccentricity. So unfortunately here I came in and circularized at too low of an altitude, so before I can even work on my plane change I should at least get to a decent altitude. It was funny because I saw that there is an intersection here. I could potentially make a rendezvous right now. However, the effort that it would take to cancel out my relative velocity is essentially the amount of effort that it would take to change the plane. So I'm just going to focus on changing the plane and then meeting up with it later where I can have a little bit more control. But so now is the third part of what I want to talk about. We are changing the plane. The best way to get into a rendezvous position is to be on the exact plane as your target. And so now if you have experience getting to Mintz, then you know about plane changes and the descending node and the ascending node. However, I'm not really taking advantage of that information right now, but we will be dealing with that later. Right now, I want to get on the same plane, and then also importantly, you want to make sure you're going the same direction. As some of you may know from some ridiculous contracts, I feel like we've all done it. You've been playing Kerbal long enough. You've all put a satellite in a specific orbit. You got that eccentricity down. You got the apoapsis, the periapsis, everything is perfect, but the contract's just not completing, and that is when you realize you're going the complete wrong direction. And so make sure when you change your plane and when you get into the right lineup with your target craft that you are going the correct direction. So now I don't have a perfect orbit here. As you see, it's very eccentric and off. However, there are points where we are going to line up and get close encounters. And so I start focusing more on that right now and changing out my apoapsis. But again, what I should have been focusing on, and what we will do soon enough, is really aligning my plane perfectly, my inclination. But nonetheless, it's all useful. You need to do it at some point. But just the fact of I was focusing more on nailing down a good rendezvous here. I'm only 0.3 kilometers away. However, when I go to make my slight adjustment burns, I realized that I could do better. But as we see in the bottom left near our nav ball, or the bottom right of the nav ball, the bottom left of the screen, we can see that our target will be at our closest approach 0.3 kilometers in about 8 minutes. It's going to take very little burn at all, so we turn down our thrust limiter to half. Don't want to turn it down too far because we still want it to be effective at high thrust, but we also are probably going to end up using just lightly tapping on the throttle. So now the problem that I'm having here, I kind of started talking through because I wasn't noticing, but we have no connection, as you see in the top left. So we are going to be passing by our target, missing it entirely, and then we will have to set up another rendezvous. Try as I might to adjust the communications, I can't point the dish at it, so I decide we are going to actually use the space station to kill our relative velocity. Unfortunately, we have no fuel in it, so we're going to have to just do it via RCS alone. Thankfully, we weren't going too fast relative to our target, so now we are essentially standing still. As you see here, our orbit is essentially the same, and we have a nice, easy rendezvous to match up with our target. But there's no point in making our rendezvous with our space station when we can just time warp a little bit and get our connection back. So now we have control of our craft. We point it towards our target and then close the gap. As we see, we have a distance of 0.0 kilometers. I am going to use the point retrograde and use our thrusters just because we are going 3.8 meters per second, so it'll be more efficient to kill our relative velocity this way than with our RCS. However, if you're going slower, you can keep pointing the direction that you're pointing and just use RCS to cover the distance. But as you see here, we're slowly matching our target speed, and now we are once again 0.0, so we are essentially standing still next to it. All we got to do is point towards our target, close the distance. We arm our grabber, was that our claw, and just use RCS to kind of position ourselves. I don't want to attach it right at the observatory, so I'm gonna move it down to the science lab a little bit, and we're just gonna kind of feel our way in by view to the final bit. And with that camera change and connection, we now have successfully rendezvoused. It's a little different when you use a docking port, I will admit that, and I think when I do my official rendezvous, because actually after doing this I realized I could probably do something very intentional and show you exactly how to rendezvous. We'll do that with a docking port. It'll be a lot smoother and more precise. But we'll do that in another episode. In the next episode, we are going to be sending that probe here, or bust. Everything is going to go. We are going to be seeing the Joolian system in the next episode next week here on KXP. That was weird. It sounded like a channel, but you know what? This is my channel, so I hope you come back and I hope you enjoy. Sneak peek of POV on Monday. We are going to essentially be doing the same thing because we're going to need to send supplies to their space station as well to keep them supplied while we send our craft to Eve. But we are going to be doing that in first person and over at Mintz, so we'll show you how to rendezvous in that way as well. But anyways, that is where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more KXP. If you did, think about subscribing. Drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.